Serena Sugden sparks suspicion in Emmerdale after she begins asking questions about a murder that happened several years ago. The newcomer made her debut last week and quickly impressed viewers with the compassion she showed towards Charity Dingle. While passing through the area, Serena stopped because she needed to use the toilet. However, the sounds she made in the bushes frightened Charity, who was already on edge. At that point, Charity had withdrawn from the village as she struggled to cope with the secrets surrounding Dr. Todd and baby Layla. Serena approached Charity with kindness, and before long, Charity realized the stranger meant her no harm. The pair sat together while Charity opened up about everything she had been dealing with. After listening, Serena got back into her car and headed to Emmerdale. Once there, she quickly struck up a friendship with Serena Sugden and introduced herself to several villagers, including Nicola King and Claudette Anderson. Since nobody in the village had met this member of the Sugden family before, conversations soon shifted to John Sugden, Robert Sugden's brother, whose reckless actions had endangered many lives. The locals were eager to find out whether Serena knew the truth about John's troubled past in Emmerdale. When Serena admitted she was already aware of everything John had done, Sarah assumed she had only come to hear the latest gossip. Although Serena insisted that wasn't her reason for visiting, upcoming episodes suggest there may be more to her interest as she starts investigating the circumstances surrounding Nate Robinson's death. Following a discussion with Serena about Nate, Moira Dingle becomes openly suspicious of her motives. Mackenzie Boyd also warns Charity that Serena cannot be trusted, mainly because she is a Sugden. Could their concerns turn out to be justified? It seems unlikely that Serena's curiosity about the man who was accidentally killed and later dumped in a lake is completely innocent. Nate Robinson vanished from the village during the autumn of 2024. At the time, his family and friends believed he had moved to Shetland after accepting a new job. As the months passed without any contact, Tracy Shankly and Kane Dingle became increasingly worried. Although Nate's relationships with both of them had been strained before he disappeared, they still expected him to stay in touch for the sake of his young daughter, Frankie. The truth finally came to light in 2025 when viewers learned what had really happened. After an altercation with Kane, John Sugden gave Nate medication, but Nate suffered a severe reaction and tragically died. In an attempt to hide the crime, John disposed of Nate's body by throwing it into a nearby lake, where it was eventually discovered. However, John's responsibility for Nate's death did not become public knowledge until the middle of 2025. The resident, who first appeared in 2024, was killed earlier this year. In a striking twist of fate, John met the same end as Nate. He was injected with a drug, suffered a fatal reaction, and died in circumstances that closely mirrored the tragedy he had caused. Kane Dingle is dealt another heartbreaking blow in Emmerdale next week when the family learns that their much-loved dog Monty has been diagnosed with cancer. The devastating news comes shortly after Kane bravely saves Monty from yet another dangerous fire. As the family struggles to process the diagnosis, Kane cannot ignore the painful similarities between Monty's illness and his own. Could his loyal companion ultimately convince him to confront his future? Monty's diagnosis leaves Kane emotionally shattered, a source from Emmerdale reveals. Looking into Monty's eyes, Kane sees a reflection of the fear and suffering he's been trying to ignore. He'd do anything to save his dog, yet he still refuses to fight for himself. The week becomes even more difficult as Kyle's increasingly rebellious behavior pushes Kane to his limit. After warning his son that the Tates only bring trouble, especially since Joe was responsible for Amy's death, Kane is alarmed when Kyle returns home deeply distressed. What Kane doesn't know is that Kyle secretly went to confront Joe in search of answers. The emotional encounter became so overwhelming that Kim Tate and Graham Foster had to step in and calm him down. Realizing exactly where Kyle has been, Kane storms over to Home Farm in a fury. He grabs Joe and issues a clear warning, demanding that the Tates stay away from his family. When Joe orders Graham to choose whose side he's on, tensions continue to rise. Back at Wishingwell, the conflict between Kane and Kyle reaches a dangerous breaking point. Kyle lashes out in anger and accidentally starts a fire in the shed, with Monty trapped inside, the insider explains. Without thinking twice, Kane smashes through the door and emerges carrying Monty to safety before rushing him straight to the veterinary clinic, leaving Kyle overwhelmed with guilt. The situation becomes even more painful when Paddy advises Kane to prepare the family for the worst. Struggling to cope with the fear and frustration, Kane directs his anger at Kyle. The following day brings even more devastating news as Paddy confirms that Monty has cancer. Heartbroken, Kane takes Monty home from the vets and goes for a quiet walk with him, reflecting on whether to begin treatment. As he speaks to his faithful companion, the parallels between their situations become impossible to ignore. Kane knows radiotherapy offers him hope, another source explains. It's only when he imagines losing Monty without doing everything possible to save him that he finally begins to question his own decisions. If Monty deserves every chance to survive, then perhaps he does too. As Kane weighs up what lies ahead for Monty, he is also forced to reconsider his own future. Could this emotional ordeal finally persuade him to accept the treatment his loved ones have been urging him to take? Kev Townsend returns to Emmerdale with another surprising twist as he opens up about his painful past and makes a life-changing decision in an effort to win over Lewis. Kev recently found himself back in the village after his long-lost son was kidnapped and held for ransom following the theft of his former girlfriend's late cat's ashes, which had been transformed into a valuable diamond. As if that wasn't dramatic enough, the former criminal turned talented baker has now decided he wants to become the caring father Lewis never had. The terrifying hostage ordeal has forced Kev to rethink his priorities and focus on building a relationship with his son. Lewis, however, is far from convinced. No matter how good Kev's baking may be, years of abandonment have left deep scars. Being left behind at birth and then disappointed again during the diamond drama has made it difficult for Lewis to trust him, leaving Kev devastated by his son's rejection. Determined to prove he has changed, Kev makes a major gesture by dropping the Townsend surname and officially becoming a Barton. In his mind, the name change is a symbol of their family bond and a fresh start. Kev explains that his decision is rooted in the painful experiences of his past. He reflects on the events that led him down the wrong path, admits the mistakes he has made, and promises he never wants to return to prison. He believes leaving his old name behind will help shield Lewis from the darkness of his own history. Just as Kev is trying to rebuild his relationship with Lewis, Ross Barton arrives ready for a confrontation. Instead of encouraging the conflict, Lewis surprises everyone by admitting he wants to give his father another opportunity. Although Ross is far from pleased, he agrees to respect Lewis's decision while making it clear that if Kev hurts his younger brother again, there will be consequences. Nicola King also remains deeply suspicious of Kev. She makes it obvious that she is watching his every move and warns him not to let Lewis down. Ross remains convinced that Kev will eventually ruin everything on his own. Soon afterwards, events seem to support that belief when someone breaks into the cafe and steals the cash box. Lewis and Nicola are left stunned by the burglary, and suspicion quickly falls on Kev. Kev strongly denies any involvement in the theft, insisting he had nothing to do with it. The incident leaves Lewis questioning whether he can trust his father after all. However, the situation feels suspiciously convenient. Could someone have deliberately framed Kev? Is Ross secretly responsible, or has Nicola gone to extreme lengths to protect Lewis from further heartbreak? Emmerdale is broadcast every weekday at 8 p.m. on ITV1, with episodes also available to stream on ITVX.